Please pray with me. Good and gracious God, open our hearts to hear whatever message we might need to hear this day. We give you thanks, O God, that you are our rock and our Redeemer. Well, I told you last week we were going to spend a couple of weeks looking at the book of Genesis. And we might be tempted to ask, how can what is written in the book of Genesis be at all relative in our life? After all, Genesis is known to be about stories about the beginning of time. And scholars often agree that Genesis chapters 1 to about 11 are really heavily symbolic. But then we get to chapter 12 in the story of Abraham, and we start to read a more factual account. But I emphasize the word more in factual because there's obviously still a great deal of symbolic story. Now, Father Abraham was a real man living in a specific city from a specific region of the world. And just to add some clarity, Abram and Abraham, they're the same person. God changed his name from Abram to Abraham in Genesis 17, a few more chapters down, just to establish a new covenant, because Abram actually meant like exalted father, but Abraham meant the fathers of multitudes, or as we know, he would be the father of the nations. And God bestowed this new name on him at the age of 99 to confirm that the promise that he was going to be the father, the great ancestor of a great many nations. Now, Abraham is the spiritual father of the Jewish faith. He's the spiritual father of the Christian faith because remember, Jesus could trace his lineage back to Abraham. And he is the spiritual father of the Muslim faith. So, the Torah, the Christian Bible, the Quran, they all view Abraham as a really strong and true example of a man, of a person of faith. All these world religions recognize that. So I think it's worth noting that we all share this common root. And you would think that all three faiths would work together to find common ground, wouldn't you? But that's a story for another time. Let's look at some background information from what archaeologists can tell us from what they've discovered from a more historical perspective. Most scholars conclude that Abraham lived around the year 1750 BCE, before the Common Era. And Abraham was from a city that we now know to be near Baghdad. And the city was part of a sophisticated civilization, really more sophisticated than you and I would imagine. Archaeologists have actually found ruins that, get this, suggest that the size of an average home was 13 to 14 rooms, which probably means that their economy was well developed, and we know that their educational system was well developed. From archaeology, we learned that these civilizations, they could do square roots. There you go, Denise. And they could do other mathematical equations. We learned that the children actually went to formal schooling. They wrote on clay tablets. And the city had a sophisticated system of canals and ditches for their water transportation. Abraham's hometown was probably as culturally sophisticated as ancient Egypt was. Now, I could give you all sorts of more details about this passage, and actually what I did in my preparation was I printed this sheet for you, and if you're interested, it gives you a more detailed explanation of the time and the background, and it's back on the welcome table. But that's enough for right now. Here's what we know from a biblical perspective. Abraham, he came after Adam and Eve and Noah. But Abraham was alive before Moses. So that means Abraham would not have heard the 10 Commandments, right? The law and the 10 Commandments were given to who? They were given to Moses. So Abraham, he's not blessed because he's obedient to God's law. No, because, well, there was no law yet. God's gifts to Abraham were not earned, not at all. So let's focus on the part of the text that says, I will bless you. Get this, Abraham did not deserve God's blessings or God's promises. Abraham, well, he's simply chosen by God to receive the blessings. Everything he has is a pure gift. So with all of this background information that I just gave you, what can we learn? What can we learn from Abraham's life story and about his relationship with God? I'm going to share a few possible lessons with you. First off, just like Abraham, we do not earn our blessings. God's blessings are a true gift. God is not like Santa Claus who blesses those that are on the good list, but, not those that are on the naughty list. So we don't need to spend a lot of energy trying to earn our blessings. Instead, maybe we could spend our energy noticing our blessings, appreciating our blessings, maybe even sharing our blessings. Another lesson from Abraham. God tells Abraham that the blessings are for all the families of the earth. God says everyone is going to be blessed on earth, Abraham, because of you. Notice the word all. Not just Jewish families, not just Christian families, not just Muslim families, not just Protestant families, and not just UCC families. Everyone on the earth is going to be blessed through the life of Abraham. So this is part of God's persistent and universal love that is love for all people, love for all of the earth. We need to hold on to that point and remember that you and I, we're meant to be instruments for God's blessing on all of the world around us, regardless of race or color or creed or gender or political persuasion, not just the families who follow Christ, and not just the families who fit the mold, and not just the families who are just like you and I. All of the families are to be blessed. There's another lesson from Abraham that's really basic. God promises and Abraham believes. God promises, Abraham believes. And Abraham lets his faith in God guide his life. All three of the world's major religions lift up Abraham as a model of a faithful person. All right, next, let's get into the part where Abraham gets moving. Did you notice that Abraham trusts in God and he's able to let go of his past? You know the expression, let go and let God? Well, Abraham didn't know that, little did he. But it must have been really challenging for Abraham because as far as we know, he led a pretty comfortable life. He wasn't starving. He wasn't out in a field. We know from the background study that I shared on Abraham's life that it may very well have been a well-established life and a secure life. It wasn't that rough. He didn't need to move. I don't know about you, but sometimes we struggle to be open to change and transition. Sometimes we struggle to let go. We find ourselves stuck within our comfort zones, and we are filled with anxiety when we step away from what's familiar, what we've always known. And I think sometimes we limit ourselves because we become so entrenched in our routines and the way we've always done it, we fail to see the potential goodness that God might be providing us with. And don't we always get stuck in our doubts? Oh, that doubt can just eat you up, can it? You apply for another job, but then you wonder, what if I don't get it? Or if I ask that person out on a date, what if they say no? Or if we decide to sell our home, what if we don't immediately find the right place? We get stuck in the what ifs of life, and we fail to remember that we are not alone because God is always walking with us. So here's Abraham. He's 75 years old. Not old, but not young either. And he trusts and he follows God's command to leave everything that's familiar to him. He's told to leave his family, his country, and to go to some sort of unknown land that God's going to provide, God's going to show him. But Abraham doesn't get stuck in the what was or the what ifs. Instead, he moves forward. So in your life, is God calling you to let go of something in your situation in order to open you up to a new blessing? Maybe you're called to pay attention to those God moments and to let go of your past. Or maybe just the life you've grown comfortable with. Maybe it's time to close a chapter. Abraham listened to God and packed up and moved because he trusted that God would bless him and that God was going to use him in a new way. So what are you possibly being called to let go of? Is it time to relocate? Is it time to downsize? Is it time to retire? And maybe this is not necessarily the right time for you to make a change. However, I think we should just keep in our minds that we would be wise to listen and trust God so that when the time is right, we're not stuck in a rut, but instead we're open to a possibility. Now, Abraham's not just willing to let go, right? He's willing to explore his next chapter. He moved to the land of Canaan, and then he traveled to a hill country east of Bethel, and he camped, and later he started out towards the southern desert, the scripture tells us. Abraham was willing to explore the options that God presented for him. We may have times in our life when we need to explore the next chapter. Is it time to pursue another job or educational opportunity? Is it time to serve God through volunteering or serving others? Or if you're younger, is it time to start a family or to add to your family? Or is it time to commit to a relationship on a deeper level? Maybe it's time to move into a senior community. You can fill in the blank with your own situation, with your own next chapter. The Lord blessed Abraham and used him in his next chapter to be a blessing to others. Now, in some translations of the biblical text that Andrew read to us, it says that Abraham journeyed in stages. So a successful next chapter doesn't have to be at warp speed. All of us are on a journey, and moving forward is the goal. Making progress is the goal. Finding your pace is an important part of the journey. And one last lesson, and perhaps the most important lesson, I think, in this passage, shows us that Abraham stayed connected to God. He stayed connected to God, and what does he do? He gives thanks. Along his journey, he stops and he builds altars so that he can worship God. Often we get so busy, right? We get busy with the day-to-day stuff. We get busy with the chaos, and we don't always take time to connect to God. Sure, we remember to pray during a time of crisis, right? But it's easy to forget to make time to connect and to be open to hearing the voice of God. Abraham continued to pray and to worship God along his way. And this allowed him to deepen his trust in the Lord and to move forward. Sometimes I think we approach the ancient stories of our faith and we wonder, do they really have any value in our modern world? And yet, when we look a little deeper, we find truths that we can relate to. Because God was present at the beginning of time and was interacting with his people, and God is present in our time. And God longs to interact with you and with me. And just like God promised to be with Abraham and to use Abraham to bless others, God is with you. God is with us every step of our journey. And God will use you to bless others. God will use you. God will walk with you. God will use you. God longs to interact with you. So let us give thanks for God's unending love. Let it be so. Amen.